Ladies and gentlemen, the Rant with Charles Lamson is completely audience supported. To donate, please send cash, check, or money order by mail to Charles Lamson, 1203 Fox Chase Drive, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301. Once again, that's Charles Lamson, 1203 Fox Chase Drive, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301. You are the fuel that keeps this machine running. Now, on with the show. Coming at you live from the beautiful heartland, these good old United States of America, right at the confluence of the mighty Mississippi and the majestic Missouri rivers, St. Charles, Missouri. This is The Rant. I am your host, Charles Lamson. I'll be with you for the next 2 hours. All right, today is Monday, 11th day of November, year of our Lord, 2019. Happy Veterans Day to all you veterans. All right, today's topic, we're going to be, today is just going to be another economic financial review. First half of the big show. We're going to have a seance, like always, going to summon forth the spirit of Alfred Marshall. He's going to discuss with us his principles of economics. There's going to be a woman's voice. You're going to be saying, that's not Alfred Marshall. It's a woman, obviously, Charles. But she's a medium, okay? Just go with me on this. She's a very, very powerful spiritual medium, and she's going to be channeling his spirit. So that explains why it'll be a woman's voice. And furthermore, those of you watching on YouTube, once again gonna be doing fitness instructional video, motivational, inspirational, disabled guy, 50-year-old disabled guy, fitness instructional video. I fit into a very obscure demographic, so I'm not sure how many 50-year-old disabled guys are out there, but hey, I'm sure there are a few veterans out there, perhaps. It's a good Veterans Day workout show. Be doing that for the first half of the show. I kind of graduated a little bit, moving away. Well, I'm not really moving away from that 10-pound therapeutic bar, but I'm branching out my workout a little bit more. I'm going to be using the dumbbells today. Just going to be using 8-pounders, no big deal. I'm going to be reclining in the chair, doing bench press, and then flies, maybe some incline press, military press, whatever we'll call it. Going to keep moving about 45, 50 minutes, trying to do as many reps as possible, and just taking breaks in between reps, where I just basically count 30 respirations. So that's roughly about 60 seconds. And so that's what we're going to be doing first half. Second half, I'm going to close the first half with the banishing ritual, sending Alfred Marshall spirit back to the spirit realm. Second half of the big show, we're going to be talking about timely top stories in the world of finance. So you guys will definitely want to tell your family, tell your friends. It's going to be a wild show. All right. Alfred, please, are you there? He's been waiting in the green room. His spirit has been restless in the green room. He's chomping at the bit to get on here and tell us about his principles of economics. Hey, Alfred, you're on.
More slowly, to be more scientific and much less dogmatic than those good and great men who bore the first fronts of the battle with the difficulties of economic problems, and to whose pioneering work we owe our own more easy course. The change may perhaps be regarded as a passing onward from that early stage in the development of scientific method, in which the operations of nature are represented as conventionally simplified for the purpose of enabling them to be described in short and easy sentences, to that higher stage in which they are studied more carefully and represented more nearly as they are, even at the expense of some loss of simplicity and definiteness, and even apparent lucidity. And in consequence, general reasoning in economics has made more rapid progress and established a firmer position in this generation in which it is subject to hostile criticism at every step than it was when at the height of its popularity, and its authority was seldom challenged. So far, we have looked at recent progress from the point of view of England only. But progress in England has been only one side of a broader movement which has extended over the whole Western world. Section 8. English economists have had many followers and many critics in foreign countries. The French school has had a continuous development from its own great thinkers in the 18th century and has avoided many errors and confusions, particularly with regard to wages, which have been common among the second rank of English economists. From the time of Say downwards, it has done a great deal of useful work. In Cournot, it has had a constructive thinker of the highest genius, while Fourier, Saint-Simon, Proudhon, and Louis Blanc have made many of the most valuable, as well as many of the wildest suggestions of socialism. The greatest relative advance during recent years is perhaps that which has been made by America. A generation ago, the American School of Economists was supposed to consist of the group of protectionists who follow Carey's lead. But new schools of vigorous thinkers are now growing up, and there are signs that America is on the way to take the same leading position in economic thought that she has already taken in economic practice. Economic science is showing signs of renewed vigor in two of its old homes, Holland and Italy, and more especially is the vigorous analytical work of the Austrian economists attracting much attention in all countries. But on the whole, the most important economic work that has been done on the continent in recent times is that of Germany. While recognizing the leadership of Adam Smith, German economists have been irritated more than any others by what they have regarded as the insular narrowness and self-confidence of the Ricardian school. In particular, they resented the way in which the English advocates of free trade tacitly assumed that a proposition which had been established with regard to a manufacturing country, such as England was, could be carried over without modification to agricultural countries. The brilliant genius and national enthusiasm of Liszt overthrew this presumption and showed that the Ricardians had taken but little account of the indirect effects of free trade. No great harm might be done in neglecting them so far as England was concerned, because there they were in the main beneficial, and thus added to the strength of its direct effects. But he showed that in Germany, and still more in America, many of its indirect effects were evil, and he contended that these evils outweighed its direct benefits. Many of his arguments were invalid, but some of them were not. And as the English economists scornfully refused them a patient discussion, able and public-spirited men, impressed by the force of those which were sound, acquiesced in the use for the purposes of popular agitation of other arguments which were unscientific, but which appealed with greater force to the working classes. American manufacturers adopted Liszt as their advocate, and the beginning of his fame, as well as of the systematic advocacy of protectionist doctrines in America, was in the wide circulation by them of a popular treatise which he wrote for them. The Germans are fond of saying that the physiocrats in the school of Adam Smith underrated the importance of national life, that they tended to sacrifice it on the one hand to a selfish individualism, and on the other to a limp philanthropic cosmopolitanism. They urge that Liszt did great service in stimulating a feeling of patriotism, which is more generous than that of individualism, and more sturdy and definite than that of cosmopolitanism. It may be doubted whether the cosmopolitan sympathies of the physiocrats and of the English economists have been as strong as the Germans think. But there is no question that the recent political history of Germany has influenced the tone of her economists in the direction of nationalism. Surrounded by powerful and aggressive armies, Germany can exist only by the aid of an ardent national feeling, and German writers have insisted eagerly, perhaps too eagerly, that altruistic feelings have a more limited scope in the economic relations between countries than in those between individuals. But though national in their sympathies, the Germans are nobly international in their studies. They have taken the lead in the comparative study of economic as well as general history. They have brought side by side the social and industrial phenomena of different countries and of different ages, have so arranged them that they throw light upon and interpret one another, and have studied them all in connection with the suggestive history of jurisprudence. The work of a few members of this school is tainted by exaggeration, and even by a narrow contempt for the reasonings of the Ricardian school, the drift and purpose of which they have themselves failed to understand, and this has led to much bitter and dreary controversy. But with scarcely an exception, the leaders of the school have been free from this narrowness. It would be difficult to overrate the value of the work which they and their fellow workers in other countries have done in tracing and explaining the history of economic habits and institutions. It is one of the great achievements of our age, and an important addition to our real wealth. It has done more than almost anything else to broaden our ideas, to increase our knowledge of ourselves, and to help to understand the evolution of man's moral and social life, and of the divine principle of which it is an embodiment. They have given their chief attention to the historical treatment of the science, and to its application to the conditions of German social and political life, especially to the economic duties of the German bureaucracy. But led by the brilliant genius of Hermann, they have made careful and profound analyses which add much to our knowledge, and they have greatly extended the boundaries of economic theory. German thought has also given an impetus to the study of socialism and the functions of the state. It is from German writers, some of whom have been of Jewish origin, that the world has received the greater part of the most thoroughgoing of recent propositions for utilizing the property of the world for the benefit of the community, with but little reference to the existing incidents of ownership. It is true that on closer investigation, their work turns out to be less original as well as less profound than at first sight appears, but it derives great power from its dialectic ingenuity, its brilliant style, and in some cases from its wide-reaching, though distorted, historical learning. Besides the revolutionary socialists, there is a large body of thinkers in Germany who are setting themselves to insist on the scantiness of the authority which the institution of private property in its present form can derive from history, and to urge on broad scientific and philosophic grounds a reconsideration of the rights of society as against the individual. The political and military institutions of the German people have recently increased their natural tendency to rely more on government and less on individual enterprise than Englishmen do. And in all questions bearing on social reforms, the English and German nations have much to learn from one another. But amid all the historical learning and reforming enthusiasm of the age, there is danger that a difficult but important part of the work of economic science may be neglected. The popularity of economics has tended in some measure to the neglect of careful and rigorous reasoning. The growing prominence of what has been called the biological view of the science has tended to throw the notions of economic law and measurement into the background, as though such notions were too hard and rigid to be applied to the living and ever-changing economic organism. But biology itself teaches us that the vertebrate organisms are the most highly developed. The modern economic organism is vertebrate, and the science which deals with it should not be invertebrate. It should have that delicacy and sensitiveness of touch which are required for enabling it to adapt itself closely to the real phenomena of the world. But nonetheless must it have a firm backbone of careful reasoning and analysis. End of Appendix B. Recording by Rhonda Fetterman. Appendix C of Principles of Economics. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Rhonda Fetterman. Principles of Economics by Alfred Marshall. Appendix C. The Scope and Method of Economics. Section 1. There are some who hold, with Kant, that the scope of any profitable study of man's action in society must be coexistive with the whole of social science. They argue that all the aspects of social life are so closely connected that a special study of any one of them must be futile, and they urge on economists to abandon their distinctive role and to devote themselves to the general advancement of a unified and all-embracing social science. But the whole range of man's actions in society is too wide and too various to be analyzed and explained by a single intellectual effort. Kant himself and Herbert Spencer have brought to the task unsurpassed knowledge and great genius. They have made epochs in thought by their broad surveys and their suggestive hints, but they can hardly be said even to have made a commencement with the construction of a unified social science. The physical sciences made slow progress so long as the brilliant but impatient Greek genius insisted on searching after a single basis for the explanation of all physical phenomena, and their rapid progress in the modern age is due to a breaking up of broad problems into their component parts. Doubtless there is a unity underlying all the forces of nature, but whatever progress has been made towards discovering it has depended on knowledge obtained by persistent specialized study, no less than on occasional broad surveys of the field of nature as a whole. And similar patient detailed work is required to supply the materials which may enable future ages to understand better than we can the forces that govern the development of the social organism. But on the other hand, it must be fully conceded to Kant that even in the physical sciences, it is the duty of those who are giving their chief work to a limited field to keep up close and constant correspondence with those who are engaged in neighboring fields. Specialists who never look beyond their own domain are apt to see things out of true proportion. Much of the knowledge they get together is of comparatively little use. They work away at the details of old problems which have lost most of their significance and have been supplanted by new questions rising out of new points of view, and they fail to gain that large illumination which the progress of every science throws by comparison and analogy of those around it. Kant did good service, therefore, by insisting that the solidarity of social phenomena must render the work of exclusive specialists even more futile in social than in physical science. Mill, conceding this, continues, a person is not likely to be a good economist who is nothing else. Social phenomena acting and reacting on one another, they cannot rightly be understood apart. But this by no means proves that the material and industrial phenomena of society are not themselves susceptible of useful generalizations, but only that these generalizations must necessarily be relative to a given form of civilization and a given stage of social advancement. Section 2. It is true that the forces with which economics deals have one advantage for deductive treatment in the fact that their method of combination is, as Mill observed, that of mechanics rather than of chemistry. That is to say, when we know the action of two economic forces separately, as, for instance, the influences which an increase in the rate of wages and a diminution in the difficulty of the work and trade will severally exert on the supply of labor in it. We can predict fairly well their conjoint action without waiting for specific experience of it. But even in mechanics, long chains of deductive reasoning are directly applicable only to the occurrences of the laboratory. By themselves, they are seldom a sufficient guide for dealing with the heterogeneous materials and the complex and uncertain combination of the forces of the real world. For that purpose, they need to be supplemented by specific experience and applied in harmony with, and often in subordination to, a ceaseless study of new facts, a ceaseless search for new inductions. For instance, the engineer can calculate with fair precision the angle at which an ironclad will lose her stability in still water. But before he predicts how she would behave in a storm, he will avail himself of the observations of experienced sailors who have watched her movements in an ordinary sea, and the forces of which economics has to take account are more numerous, less definite, less well known, and more diverse in character than those of mechanics, while the material on which they act is more uncertain and less homogeneous. Again, the cases in which economic forces combine with more of the apparent arbitrariness of chemistry than of the simple regularity of pure mechanics are neither rare nor unimportant. For instance, a small addition to a man's income will generally increase his purchases a little in every direction, but a large addition may alter his habits, perhaps increase his self-respect and make him cease to care for some things altogether. The spread of a fashion from a higher social grade to a lower may destroy the fashion among the higher grade. And again, increased earnestness in our care for the poor may make charity more lavish, or may destroy the need for some of its forms altogether. Lastly, the matter with which the chemist deals is the same always. But economics, like biology, deals with the matter of which the inner nature and constitution, as well as the outer form, are constantly changing. The chemist's predictions all rest on the latent hypothesis that the specimen operated upon is what it is supposed to be, or at least that the impurities in it are only such as may be neglected. But even he, when dealing with living beings, can seldom sail safely any considerable way out of sight of the firm land of specific experience. He must rely mainly on that to tell him how a new drug will affect a person in health, and again how it will affect a person with a certain disease. And even after some general experience, he may find unexpected results in its action on persons of different constitutions, or in a new combination with other drugs. If, however, we look at the history of such strictly economic relations as those of business credit and banking, of trade unionism or cooperation, we see that modes of working that have been generally successful at some times and places have uniformly failed at others. The difference may sometimes be explained simply as the result of variations in general enlightenment, or of moral strength of character and habits of mutual trust. But often the explanation is more difficult. At one time or place, men will go far in trust of one another and in sacrifice of themselves for the common well-being, but only in certain directions. And at another time or place, there will be a similar limitation, but the directions will be different. And every variation of this kind limits the range of deduction in economics. For our present purpose, the pliability of the race is more important than the pliability of the individual. It is true that individual character changes, partly in an apparently arbitrary way, and partly according to well-known rules. It is true, for instance, that the average age of the workman engaged in a labor dispute is an important element in any forecast of the lines on which it will run. But as, generally speaking, young and old, people of a sanguine and despondent temperament are found in about like proportions at one place as at another, and at one time as at another, Individual peculiarities of character and changes of character are a less hindrance to the general application of the deductive method than at first sight appears. Thus, by patient interrogation of nature and the progress of analysis, the reign of law is being made to invade new fields in both therapeutics and economics, and some sort of prediction, independent of specific experience, is becoming possible as to the separate and combined action of an ever-increasing variety of agencies. Section 3. The function, then, of analysis and deduction in economics is not to forge a few long chains of reasoning, but to forge rightly many short chains and single connecting links. This, however, is no trivial task. If the economist reasons rapidly and with a light heart, he is apt to make bad connections at every turn of his work. He needs to make careful use of analysis and deduction, because only by their aid can he select the right facts, group them rightly, and make them serviceable for suggestions in thought and guidance in practice. And because as surely as every deduction must rest on the basis of inductions, so surely does every inductive process involve and include analysis and deduction. Or to put the same thing in another way, the explanation of the past and the prediction of the future are not different operations, but the same worked in opposite directions, the one from effect to cause, and the other from cause to effect. As Schmoller well says, to obtain a knowledge of individual causes, we need induction, the final conclusion of which is indeed nothing but the inversion of the syllogism which is employed in deduction. Induction and deduction rest on the same tendencies, the same beliefs, the same needs of our reason. We can explain an event completely only by first discovering all the events which can have affected it, and the ways in which they can severally have done so. Insofar as our analysis of any of these facts or relations is imperfect, insofar is our explanation liable to error, and the inference latent in it is already on its way to build up an induction which, though probably plausible, is false. While insofar as our knowledge and analysis are complete, we are able by merely inverting our mental process to deduce and predict the future almost as certainly as we could have explained the past on a similar basis of knowledge. It is only when we go beyond a first step that a great difference arises between the certainty of prediction and the certainty of explanation. For any error made in the first step of prediction will be accumulated and intensified in the second, while in interpreting the past, error is not so likely to be accumulated. For observation or recorded history will probably bring a fresh check at each step. The same processes, both inductive and deductive, are used in nearly the same way in the explanation of a known fact in the history of the tides and in the prediction of an unknown fact. It must then always be remembered that though observation or history may tell us that one event happened at the same time as another, or after it, they cannot tell us whether the first was the cause of the second. That can be done only by reason acting on the facts. When it is said that a certain event in history teaches this or that, formal reckoning is never made for all the conditions which were present when the event happened. Some are tacitly, if not unconsciously, assumed to be irrelevant. This assumption may be justifiable in any particular case, but it may not. Wider experience, more careful inquiry, may show that the causes to which the event is attributed could not have produced it unaided, perhaps even that they hindered the event, which was brought about in spite of them by other causes that have escaped notice. This difficulty has been made prominent by recent controversies as to contemporary events in our own country. Whenever a conclusion is drawn from them that meets with opposition, it has to stand a sort of trial. Rival explanations are offered. new facts are brought to light. The old facts are tested and rearranged, and in some cases shown to support the opposite conclusion from that on behalf of which they were at first invoked. Both the difficulty of analysis and the need for it are increased by the fact that no two economic events are exactly alike in all respects. Of course, there may be a close resemblance between two simple incidents. The terms of the leases of two farms may be governed by nearly the same causes. Two references of wages questions to boards of arbitration may raise substantially the same question. But there is no exact repetition, even on a small scale. However nearly two cases correspond, we have to decide whether the difference between the two may be neglected as practically unimportant. And this may not be very easy, even if the two cases refer to the same place and time. And if we are dealing with the facts of remote times, we must allow for the changes that have meanwhile come over the whole character of economic life. However closely a problem of today may resemble in its outward incidents another recorded in history, it is probable that a closer examination will detect a fundamental difference between their real characters. Till this has been made, no valid argument can be drawn from one case to the other. Section 4. This brings us to consider the relation in which economics stands to the facts of distant times. The study of economic history may have various aims, and correspondingly, various methods. Regarded as a branch of general history, it may aim at helping us to understand what has been the institutional framework of society at the several periods, what has been the constitution of the various social classes and their relation to one another. It may ask what has been the material basis of social existence. How have the necessities and conveniences of life been produced? By what organization has labor been provided and directed? How have the commodities thus produced been distributed? What have been the institutions resting on this direction and distribution? And so on. And for this work, interesting and important as it is on its own account, not very much analysis is essential. And most of what is needed may be supplied for himself by a man of active and inquiring mind, saturated with a knowledge of the religious and moral, the intellectual and aesthetic, the political and social environment. The economic historian may extend the boundaries of our knowledge and may suggest new and valuable ideas, even though he may have contented himself with observing those affinities and those causal relations which lie near the surface. But even in spite of himself, his aims will surely run beyond these limits, and will include some attempt to discover the inner meaning of economic history, to unveil the mysteries of the growth and decay of custom, and other phenomena which we are not any longer contented to take as ultimate and insoluble facts given by nature. Nor is he likely altogether to withhold himself from suggesting inferences from the events of the past for guidance in the present. And indeed, the human mind abhors a vacuum in its notions of the causal relations between the events that are presented vividly to it. By merely placing things together in a certain order and consciously or unconsciously suggesting post hoc ergo propter hoc, the historian takes on himself some responsibility as a guide. For example, the introduction of long leases at fixed monthly rents in North Britain was followed by a great improvement in agriculture and in the general condition of the people there. But before inferring that it was the sole or even chief cause of the improvement, we must inquire what other changes were taking place at the same time, and how much of the improvement is to be referred to each of them. We must, for instance, allow for the effects of changes in the prices of agricultural produce, and of the establishment of civil order in the broader provinces. To do this requires care and scientific method. Until it has been done, no trustworthy inference can be drawn as to the general tendency of the system of long leases. And even when it has been done, We cannot argue from this experience to a proposal for a system of long leases in, say, Ireland now, without allowing for differences in the character of local and world markets for various kinds of agricultural produce, for probable changes in the production and consumption of gold and silver, and so on. The history of land tenures is full of antiquarian interest, but until carefully analyzed and interpreted by the aid of economic theory, it throws no trustworthy light on the question: what is the best form of land tenure to be adopted now in any country? Thus, some argue that since primitive societies usually held their land in common, private property in land must be an unnatural and transitional institution. Others with equal confidence contend that since private property in land has extended its range with the progress of civilization, it is a necessary condition for further progress. But to wrest from history her true teaching on the subject requires the effects of the common holding of land in the past to be analyzed so as to discover how far each of them is likely to act always in the same way, how far to be modified by changes in the habits, the knowledge, the wealth, and the social organization of mankind. Even more interesting and instructive is the history of the professions, made by guilds and other corporations and combinations in industry and in domestic and foreign trade, that they use their privileges on the whole for the benefit of the public. But to bring in a complete verdict on the question, and still more to deduce from it sound guidance for our own time, needs not only the wide general knowledge and subtle instincts of the practiced historian, but also a grasp of many of the most difficult analyses and reasonings relating to monopolies, to foreign trade, to the incidence of taxation, etc. If then the economic historian aims at discovering the hidden springs of the economic order of the world, and at obtaining light from the past for guidance in the present, he should avail himself of every resource that may help him to detect real differences that are disguised by a similarity of name or outward appearance, and real similarities that are obscured by a superficial difference. He should strive to select the true causes of each event and assign to each its proper weight, and above all, to detect the remoter causes of change. An analogy may be borrowed from naval affairs. The details of a battle with appliances that have passed away may be of great interest to the student of the general history of those times, but they may afford little useful guidance for the naval commander of today, who has to deal with a wholly different material of war. And therefore, as Captain Mahan has admirably shown, the naval commander of today will give more attention to the strategy than to the tactics of past times. He will concern himself not so much with the incidents of particular combats as with practical illustrations of those leading principles of action which will enable him to hold his whole force in hand, and yet give to each part of it adequate initiative, to keep up wide communication and yet be able to concentrate quickly and select a point of attack at which he can bring an overwhelming force. Similarly, a man saturated with the general history of a period may give a vivid picture of the tactics of a battle, which will be true in its main outlines, and almost harmless, even if occasionally wrong. For no one is likely to copy tactics, the appliances of which have passed away. But to comprehend the strategy of a campaign, to separate the real from the apparent motives of a great general of past times, a man must be a strategist himself. And if he is to make himself responsible for suggesting, however unobtrusively, the lessons which the strategists of today have to learn from the story which he records, then he is bound to have analyzed thoroughly the naval conditions of today, as well as those of the time about which he is writing, and he must neglect no aid for this end that is to be had from the work of many minds in many countries studying the difficult problem of strategy. As it is with naval history, so it is with economic. It is only recently, and to a great extent through the wholesome influence of the criticisms of the historical school, that prominence has been given to that distinction in economics which corresponds to the distinction between strategy and tactics in warfare. Corresponding to tactics are those outward forms and accidents of economic organization which depend on temporary or local aptitudes, customs and relations of classes, on the influence of individuals, or on the changing appliances and needs of production. While to strategy corresponds that more fundamental substance of economic organization, which depends mainly on such wants and activities, such preferences and aversions as are found in man everywhere. They are not indeed always the same in form, nor even quite the same in substance, but yet they have a sufficient element of permanence and universality to a distinction is akin to the distinction between the uses of mechanical and biological analogies in economics. It was not sufficiently recognized by economists at the beginning of last century. It is markedly absent from Ricardo's writings, and when attention is paid, not to the principles which are embodied in his method of working, but to particular conclusions which he reaches. When these are converted into dogmas and applied crudely to the conditions of times or places other than his own, then no doubt they are almost unmixed evils. His thoughts are like sharp chisels with which it is especially easy to cut one's fingers, because they have such awkward handles. But modern economists distilling his crude expressions, extracting their essence and adding to it, rejecting dogmas but developing principles of analysis and reasoning, are finding the many in the one and the one in the many. They are learning, for instance, that the principle of his analysis of rent is inapplicable to much that commonly goes by the name of rent today, as well as to a much larger part of those things which are commonly, but incorrectly, described as rent by historians of the Middle Ages. But yet, the application of the principle is being extended and not contracted. For economists are also learning that it is applicable with proper care to a great variety of things in every stage of civilization, which do not appear at first sight to be of the nature of rent at all. But of course, no student of strategy can ignore tactics. And though no one life will reach out to a study in detail of the tactics of every fight which man has waged with his economic difficulties, yet no study of the broad problems of economic strategy is likely to be worth much unless it is combined with an intimate knowledge of the tactics as well as the strategy of man's struggles against his difficulties in some particular age and country. And further, every student should make by personal observation a minute study of some particular set of details, not necessarily for publication, but for his own training, and this will help him much to interpret and weigh the evidence which he obtains in print or writing, whether with regard to the present or past times. Of course, every thoughtful and observant man is always obtaining, from conversation and current literature, a knowledge of the economic facts of his own time, and especially in his own neighborhood. And the store of facts which he thus imperceptibly gets is sometimes more full and thorough in certain special regards than is to be distilled from all the records in existence as to some classes of facts in remote places and times. But independently of this, the direct and formal study of facts, perhaps mainly those of his own age, will much exceed the study of mere analysis and theory in its demands on the time of any serious economist, even though he may be one of those who rank most highly the importance of ideas relatively to facts, even though he may think it is not so much the collection of new facts as the better study of those already collected that is our most urgent need now, or that will help us most in improving the tactics as well as the strategy of man's contests with his difficulties. Section 5. It is doubtless true that much of this work has less need of elaborate scientific methods than of a shrewd mother wit, of a sound sense of proportion, and of a large experience of life, But on the other hand, there is much work that is not easily to be done without such machinery. Natural instinct will select rapidly and combine justly considerations which are relevant to the issue in hand. But it will select chiefly from those which are familiar. It will seldom lead a man far below the surface or far beyond the limits of his personal experience. And it happens that in economics, neither those effects of known causes nor those causes of known effects which are most patent are generally the most important. That which is not seen is often better worth studying than that which is seen. Especially is this the case if we are not dealing with some question of merely local or temporary interest, but are seeking guidance in the construction of a far-reaching policy for the public good, or if, for any other reason, we are concerned less with immediate causes than with causes of causes. For experience shows, as might have been anticipated, that common sense and instinct are inadequate for this work, that even a business training does not always lead a man to search far for those causes of causes which lie beyond his immediate experience, and that it does not always direct that search well, even when he makes the attempt. For help in doing that, everyone must perforce rely on the powerful machinery of thought and knowledge that has been gradually built up by past generations. For indeed, the part which systematic scientific reasoning plays in the production of knowledge resembles that which machinery plays in the production of goods. When the same operation has to be performed over and over again in the same way, it generally pays to make a machine to do the work, though when there is so much changing variety of detail that it is unprofitable to use machines, the goods must be made by hand. Similarly, in knowledge, when there are any processes of investigation or reasoning in which the same kind of work has to be done over and over again in the same kind of way, then it is worthwhile to reduce the processes to system, to organize methods of reasoning and to formulate general propositions to be used as machinery for working on the facts and as vices for holding them firmly in position for the work. And though it be true that economic causes are intermingled with others in so many different ways, that exact scientific reasoning will seldom bring us very far on the way to the conclusion for which we are seeking. Yet it would be foolish to refuse to avail ourselves of its aid, so far as it will reach. Just as foolish as would be the opposite extreme of supposing that science alone can do all the work, and that nothing will remain to be done by practical instinct and trained common sense. An architect whose practical wisdom and aesthetic instincts are undeveloped will build but a poor house, however thorough his knowledge of mechanics. But one who is ignorant of mechanics will build insecurely or wastefully. A Brindley, without academic instruction, may do some engineering work better than a man of inferior mother wit, however well he may have been trained. A wise nurse, who reads her patients by instinctive sympathy, may give better counsel on some points than a learned physician, but yet the study of analytical mechanics should not be neglected by the engineer, nor that of physiology by the medical man. For mental faculties, like manual dexterity, die with those who possess them, but the improvement which each generation contributes to the machinery of manufacture or to the organon of science is handed down to the next. There may be no abler sculptors now than those who worked on the Parthenon, no thinker with more mother wit than Aristotle, but the appliances of thought develop cumulatively, as do those of material production. Ideas, whether those of art and science or those embodied in practical appliances, are the most real of the gifts that each generation receives from its predecessors. The world's material wealth would quickly be replaced if it were destroyed, but the ideas by which it was made were retained. If, however, the ideas were lost, but not the material wealth, then that would dwindle and the world would go back to poverty. And most of our knowledge of mere facts could quickly be recovered if it were lost. but the constructive ideas of thought remained, while if the ideas perished, the world would enter again on the Dark Ages. Thus, the pursuit of ideas is not less real work in the highest sense of the word than is the collection of facts, though the latter may in some cases properly be called in German a real Studium, that is, a study especially appropriate to real Schulen. In the highest use of the word, that study of any field of the wide realm of economics is most real, in which the collection of facts and the analysis and construction of ideas connecting them are combined in those proportions which are best calculated to increase knowledge and promote progress in that particular field. And what this is cannot be settled offhand, but only by careful study and by specific experience. Section 6. Economics has made greater advances than any other branch of the social sciences, because it is more definite and exact than any other. But every widening of its scope involves some loss of this scientific precision, and the question whether that loss is greater or less than the gain resulting from its greater breadth of outlook is not to be decided by any hard and fast rule. There is a large debatable ground in which economic considerations are of considerable but not dominant importance, and each economist may reasonably decide for himself how far he will extend his labors over that ground. He will be able to speak with less and less confidence the further he gets away from his central stronghold, and the more he concerns himself with conditions of life and with motives of action, which cannot be brought to some extent at least within the grasp of scientific method. Whenever he occupies himself largely with conditions and motives, the manifestations of which are not reducible to any definite standard, he must forego nearly all aid and support from the observations and the thought of others at home and abroad, in this and earlier generations. He must depend mainly on his own instincts and conjectures. He must speak with all the diffidence that belongs to an individual judgment. But if, when straying far into less known and less knowable regions of social study, he does his work carefully, and with a full consciousness of its limitations, he will have done excellent service. End of Appendix C. Recording by Rhonda Fetterman.
Appendix D of Principles of Economics. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Icy Jumbo. Principles of Economics by Alfred Marshall. Appendix D. Uses of Abstract Reasoning in Economics. Section 1. Induction, aided by analysis and deduction, brings together the appropriate classes of facts, arranges them, analyzes them, and infers from them general statements or laws. Then for a while, deduction plays the chief role. It brings some of these generalizations into association with one another, works from them tentatively to new and broader generalizations or laws, and then calls on induction again to do the main share of the work in collecting, sifting, and arranging these facts so as to test and verify the new law. It is obvious that there is no room in economics for long trains of deductive reasoning. No economist, not even Ricardo, attempted them. It may indeed appear at first sight that the contrary is suggested by the frequent use of mathematical formulae in economic studies. But on investigation, it will be found that this suggestion is illusory, except perhaps when a pure mathematician uses economic hypotheses for the purpose of mathematical diversions. For then his concern is to show the potentialities of mathematical methods on the supposition that material appropriate to their use had been supplied by economic study. He takes no technical responsibility for the material and is often unaware how inadequate the material is to bear the strains of his powerful machinery. but a training in mathematics is helpful by giving command over a marvellously terse and exact language for expressing clearly some general relations and some short processes of economic reasoning, which can indeed be expressed in ordinary language, but not with equal sharpness of outline. And, what is of far greater importance, experience in handling physical problems by mathematical methods gives a grasp that cannot be obtained equally well in any other way of the mutual interaction of economic changes. The direct application of mathematical reasoning to the discovery of economic truths has recently rendered great services in the hands of master mathematicians to the study of statistical averages and probabilities, and in measuring the degree of consilience between correlated statistical tables. Section 2. If we shut our eyes to realities, we may construct an edifice of pure crystal by imaginations that will throw sidelights on real problems and might conceivably be of interest to beings who had no economic problems at all like our own. Such playful excursions are often suggestive in unexpected ways. They afford good training to the mind and seem to be productive only of good, so long as their purpose is clearly understood. For instance, the statement that the dominant position which money holds in economics results rather from its being a measure of motive than an aim of endeavour may be illustrated by the reflection that the almost exclusive use of money as a measure of motive is, so to speak, an accident, and perhaps an accident that is not found in other worlds than ours. When we want to induce a man to do anything for us, we generally offer him money. It is true that we might appeal to his generosity or sense of duty, but this would be calling into action latent motives that are already in existence, rather than supplying new motives. If we have to supply a new motive, we generally consider how much money will just make it worth his while to do it. Sometimes, indeed, the gratitude or esteem or honour which is held out as an inducement to the action may appear as a new motive, particularly if it can be crystallized in some definite outward manifestation, as for instance in the right to make use of the letters CB, or to wear a star or a garter. Such distinctions are comparatively rare and connected with but few transactions, and they would not serve as a measure of the ordinary motives that govern men in the acts of everyday life. But political services are more frequently rewarded by such honours than in any other way, so we have got into the habit of measuring them not in money but in honours. We say, for instance, that A's exertions for the benefit of his party or of the state, as the case may be, were fairly paid for by a knighthood, while knighthood was but shabby pay for B. He had earned a baronetcy. It is quite possible that there may be worlds in which no one ever heard of private property and material things, or wealth as it is generally understood, but public honours are meted out by graduated tables as rewards for every action that is done for others' good. If these honours can be transferred from one to another without the intervention of any external authority, they may serve to measure the strength of motives just as conveniently and exactly as money does with us. In such a world, there may be a treatise on economic theory very similar to the present, even though there be little mention in it of material things, and no mention at all of money. It may seem almost trivial to insist on this, but it is not so, for a misleading association has grown up in people's minds between that measurement of motives which is prominent in economic science, and an exclusive regard for material wealth to the neglect of other and higher objects of desire. The only conditions required in a measure for economic purposes are that it should be something definite and transferable. Its taking a material form is practically convenient, but is not essential. Section 3. The pursuit of abstractions is a good thing when confined to its proper place. But the breadth of those strains of human character with which economics is concerned has been underrated by some writers on economics in England and other countries, and German economists have done good service by emphasizing it. They seem, however, to be mistaken in supposing that it was overlooked by the founders of British economics. It is a British habit to leave much to be supplied by the common sense of the reader. In this case, reticence has been carried too far, and has led to frequent misunderstanding at home as well as abroad. It has led people to suppose foundations of economics to be narrower and less closely in touch with the actual conditions of life than they really are. Thus, prominence has been given to Mill's statement that Political economy considers man as occupied solely in acquiring and consuming wealth. But it is forgotten that he is there referring to an abstract treatment of economic questions, which he once indeed contemplated, but which he never executed, preferring to write on political economy with some of its applications to social philosophy. It is forgotten also that he goes on to say, there is perhaps no action of a man's life in which he is neither under the immediate nor under the remote influence of any impulse but the mere desire of wealth. And it is forgotten that his treatment of economic questions took constant account of many motives besides the desire for wealth. His discussion of economic motives are, however, inferior both in substance and in method to those of his German contemporaries, and notably Hermann. An instructive argument that non-purchasable, non-measurable pleasures vary at different times and tend to increase with the progress of civilization is to be found in Knuth's Politische Ökonomie, and the English reader may be referred to Syme's Outlines of an Industrial Science. It may be well to give here the chief heads of the analysis of economic motives, Motive im wirtschaftlichen Handeln, in the third edition of Wagner's monumental treatise. He divides them into egoistic and altruistic. The former are four in number. The first and least intermittent in its action is the striving for one's own economic advantage and the fear of one's own economic need. Next comes the fear of punishment and the hope of reward. The third group consists of the feeling of honour and the striving for recognition, Geltungsstreben, including the desire for the moral approbation of others and the fear of shame and contempt. And the last of the egoistic motives is the craving for occupation.
All right, thank you,
the
Alfred.
pleasure of activity,
Alfred,
and the
that'll be
pleasure of the
enough.
work itself and its
Enough.
surroundings.
Spirit be gone. I banish you to the fiery depths of hell until I call thee forth again for the next installment of my podcast / YouTube / blog installment / seance / summoning ritual, whatever. Spirit be gone. Get the hell out of here. I don't care where you go, but you can't stay here. Alfred Marshall. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So now we're going to be talking about contemporary stuff. That's right, timely stuff. Timely top stories in the world of finance. Here's a story about the Uber co-founder, Travis Kalanick. All right, let's see here. Coming at you from Lauren Feiner at CNBC. Uber co-founder Travis Kalanick sells $500 million in stock after a lockup period ends. Oh, by the way, caller lines are wide open. So if you want to call in and be a part of the big show, have anything on your mind you want to talk about, you got any suggestions or directions you want the show to go in, suggestions of a direction you would like the show to go in, or you want to talk about today's topic or just news in the timely finance news, we can do that as well, or whatever, man. Talk about some investing, financial plan, personal financial planning, whatever. We're always open to audience participation. So, yeah, give us a call here. We're at 636-946-36. All right, no, oh, shoot. Sorry, don't call that number. Call this number if you want to call into the big show. The number is 657-383-1825. That's 657-383-1825. Give us a call. Be a part of the big show. All right. Uber co-founder Travis Kalanick sells $500 million in stock after a lockup period ends. Sleeping. Camilla, please. Nervous people. Kalanick was ousted as CEO of Uber after accusations that he helped foster an unhealthy environment at the company. Kalanick is starting a new venture called Cloud Kitchens, which reportedly has a major investment from a Saudi fund. Uber co-founder and director Travis Kalanick sold more than $500 million worth of stock last week after the company's lockup period expired. Uber's 180-day restriction on inside and early investor sales came to an end Wednesday, sending the stock down that day in anticipation of a wave of sales. Kalanick, the former CEO of Uber, who was ousted from the top seat after being accused of fostering an unhealthy workplace environment, sold more than 20 million shares held in a trust over 3 days last week, according to a financial filing submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission on Friday. Uber stock has plummeted to about $27 per share as of Friday's closing price from its opening price of $42 at its May debut. The company's market value is now about $45 billion, down from nearly $70 billion at the end of its first trading day. Kalanick still directly owns more than 75 million shares in Uber, according to the filing. Despite his tenuous relationship to the company following accusations of sexual harassment and discrimination at Uber under his leadership, Kalanick still sits on the board and was present at the New York Stock Exchange. Leave me alone. At the New York Stock Exchange. Kalanick still sits on the board and was present at the New York Stock Exchange during the company's IPO in May, though not on the dais with company executives. While it's unclear why Kalanick chose to sell his shares, he could use the money to help fund his new venture, Cloud Kitchens. According to its website, the startup plans to rent space to restaurateurs for delivery-based businesses. The project has again cast controversy on Kalanick after the Wall Street Journal reported he raised $400 million from a Saudi fund and is also a major investor in Uber. The fund's first known deal in Silicon Valley since Jamal Khashoggi's death, the Central Intelligence Agency concluded last year that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the killing of Khashoggi. Washington Post columnist. Whatever, man. You can believe that if you want. I don't know, whatever. But I don't know what to believe anymore, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I stick with the financial news, because it's so honest. No, but I mean, economics, finance, it's a lot of it is just numbers and hard data. You got to try and stick. I find that a lot more comfortable. I mean, you got to look for the numbers and the hard data and just stick with that. And try not to get swayed by the propaganda. That's why I pretty much hate all mainstream news, left, right, what have you. I don't care. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's a business meant to sell advertising. Period. End of freaking story. Maybe do a little mind control at the same time. Keep the sheep in line. All right. Moving on. Hello. Moving on. Oh, wow. Google's secret Project Nightingale gathers personal health data on millions of Americans. Coming at you from the Wall Street Journal. Let's see what's going on here. This will be an interesting experiment to see how objective this article actually is, seeing how I am actually getting it from the Google Finance news feed. should be interesting. Let's see how objective they are about this article. Okay, coming at you from the Wall Street Journal, granted, but they're going. It was posted on. It was referred to me by the Google Finance newsfeed. So let's see here. Oh, come on already. Google's secret project Nightingale. Ooh, sounds very mysterious and intimidating. Gathers personal health data on millions of Americans. Though, search giant is amassing health records from Ascension facilities in 21 states. Patients not yet informed. Huh. Okay. I wonder how long this article will stay up. I mean, there's breaking news. They just posted it. So let's see here. Oh man, it might. What the heck is this? Oh, that's ridiculous. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see what's going on here. I see what's going on here. Okay. Got to be a damn rocket scientist to navigate this site. Okay. Google is engaged in a secret project with one of the country's largest healthcare systems to collect and crunch the detailed personal health information of millions of Americans across 21 states, according to people familiar with the matter and internal documents. The initiative, codenamed Project Nightingale, appears to be the largest in a series of efforts by Silicon Valley giants to gain access to personal health data and establish a toehold in the massive healthcare industry. Amazon.com Inc., Apple Inc., and Microsoft Corp. are also aggressively pushing into healthcare, though they haven't yet struck deals of this scope. Google began the effort last year with St. Louis-based Ascension, the second largest health system in the U.S., with the data sharing accelerating over this summer and fall, the documents show. The data involved in Project Nightingale pertains to lab results, doctor diagnoses, and hospitalization records, among other categories, and amounts to a complete health history, including patient names and dates of birth. Neither patients nor doctors have been notified. At least 150 Google employees already have access to much of the data on tens of millions of patients, according to a person familiar with the matter and documents. Some Ascension employees have raised questions about the way the data is being collected and shared, both from a technological and ethical perspective, according to the people familiar with the project, but privacy experts said it appeared to be permissible under federal law. That law, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, generally allows hospitals to share data with business partners without telling patients, as long as the information is used only to help the covered entity carry out its healthcare functions. Google, in this case, is using the data in part to design new software underpinned by advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning that zeroes in on individual patients to suggest chances to their care. Staffers across Alphabet Inc., Google's parent, have access to the patient information. Documents show, including some employees of Google Brain, a research science division created with some of the company's biggest breakthroughs. A Google spokeswoman said the project is fully compliant with federal health law and includes robust protections for patient data. An Ascension spokesman had no immediate comment. No, no. Google and nonprofit Ascension have parallel financial motives. Google has assigned dozens of engineers to Project Nightingale so far without charging for the work because it hopes to use the framework to sell similar products to other health systems. Its end goal is to create an omnibus search tool to aggregate disparate patient data and host it all in one place, documents show. The project is being developed under Google's cloud division, which trails rivals like Amazon and Microsoft in market share. Google CEO Sundar Pichai has said repeatedly this year that finding new areas of growth for cloud is a priority. Ascension, a Catholic chain of 2,600 hospitals, doctors' offices, and other facilities, aims in part to improve patient care. It also hopes to mine data to order up more tests or determine where it might be able to make more money from an individual patient, documents show. Ascension is also eager for a faster system than its existing decentralized electronic record-keeping network. Google, like many of its Silicon Valley peers, has at times drawn criticism for not doing enough to protect user privacy. Its YouTube unit agreed in September to pay $170 million in fines and make changes to its practices in response to complaints that it illegally corrected data on children to sell ads. YouTube neither admitted nor denied the wrongdoing. So, last year, the Wall Street Journal reported that Google hit a flaw that exposed hundreds of thousands of birthdays, contact information, and other personal data of subscribers in its now defunct social networking website, Google+. I really enjoyed Google+. I was sorry to see that go, but anyway. In part because of fears that the incident could trigger regulatory scrutiny. Oh, okay, so that's why they got rid of it. I was never too clear on why they closed that down. So you learn something new every day, right? Google said at the time it went beyond legal requirements in determining not to inform users. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Moving on. New story. I was just waxing nostalgic for the old Google Plus days. We had a little community going there. And it was crushed. All right, so let's see here. Let's start. Okay, this startup helps match veterans to support services. Coming at you from Fast Company. More than 46,000 agencies provide services to veterans. What is this? Leave me alone, please. Come on. Scroll down. Scroll down. Got a clever little pop-up ad there. Leave me alone, please. Thank you. Scroll down to continue. Trying. Get clever with these pop-ups. It's like being a judo master. All right. Coming at you from Gwen Morin. As Veterans Day rolls around each year, calls to honor the people who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces escalate. Commercials of soldiers joyfully reuniting with their families begin to air. And let's not forget the bargains that are available during Veterans Day sales. But the daily reality for many veterans is starker. $1.4 million veterans live in households that participate in supplemental nutrition assistance programs. according to Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a progressive think tank. A Department of Housing and Urban Development study found that on a single night in January 2018, over 37,800 veterans were experiencing homelessness. More than 40% of the 4.2 million veterans from Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and Operation New Dawn screened positive or reported that they were told by a health professional that they have a mental health condition. Finding a new civilian life. Approximately 200,000 people transition from military service to civilian life each year, according to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. A 2015 report from Syracuse University's Institute for Veterans and Military Families. Their top challenges in transition include navigating VA programs, benefits, and services, 60%, finding a job, 55%, and adjusting to civilian culture, 41%. Veterans Dan Brillman and Taylor Justice learned of these challenges firsthand, and through their friends and colleagues, Justice was medically discharged in 2007 after graduating from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and serving as an infantry officer in the Army. He then joined a Philadelphia nonprofit that provided services for veterans. Brillman joined the military as an Air Force Reserve pilot in 2007 after graduating from Yale University the year before. He was deployed twice to the Middle East in 2010 and 2012. After returning to the U.S., he went to business school at Columbia University, where he met Justice in 2012. In my second year, veterans that I served with started coming to me with their both mental and social service issues, thinking that I could solve them, Brillman says. What's this? No, it's never. So, he tried to help, he says. But the services they needed were delivered through many different institutions and agencies, according to nonprofit monitoring website GuideStar. There are more than 45,000 nonprofits that provide services to veterans in the U.S. However, there was no cohesive method for finding those organizations or the services they offered. When Brillman and Justice met, the two quickly realized that they shared an interest in working to improve this process. One business plan and a seed round of venture funding later, the two founded software company Unite Us in 2013 to solve this problem. The platform they created provides an access point to the community, healthcare, and other services for veterans, and is accessible to any military member, veteran, or military family member, Brillman says. One portal, many services. So the platform is meant to create one portal through which veterans can access services, everything from housing, food, benefits, and healthcare assistance, to access to education and career advancement opportunities. So far, the platform has grown to 55 networks in 30 states. Through these networks, efficiency improves, including interagency referrals, Justice says. Unite Us's data found that a simple referral to services can take 17 days typically. That lag is inexcusable in this day and age, he says. We are trying to take the same standards we have in the retail market. If you buy something off of Amazon and it's not at our house in 24 to 48 hours, we're upset, he says. You don't have the same standards for basic needs, housing, food, transportation, he says. Unite Us has been able to reduce that referral time 88% from 17 days to less than 2 days, he says. The platform is free to veterans, military members, and their families. The company makes money by providing these networks to big health systems, that can then access the myriad service providers and make referrals when needed. The company's major clients currently include Kaiser Permanente, Aetna Health, CVS, and North Carolina's Department of Health and Human Services. The company raised Series B funding in June and plans to be nationwide within the next 5 years. It was named to CB Insight's 150 Most Innovative Digital Startups list in 2019. The founders see Unite Us as being at the center of a greater shift in healthcare and veteran services markets. As the healthcare market moves from fee-for-service to value-based care, that fuels a big movement and a redistribution of dollars from healthcare and social services, he says. Unite Us will be the foundation from a technology perspective to allow for value-based payment arrangements with community-based organizations addressing veterans' health and service needs on a larger scale, Justice says. We really see ourselves in that foundational element that allows us to look at Americans holistically, not just clinically, he says. All right, moving on. KKR makes formal approach to Walgreens. Boots on record buyout. KKR and Company has formally approached drugstore giant Walgreens Boots Alliance, Inc. about a deal to take the company private in what could be the biggest ever leveraged buyout, people familiar with the matter said. The New York-based private equity firm has been preparing a proposal to potentially buy out shareholders of Walgreens Boots, said the People, who asked not to be identified because discussions are private. It's unclear how feasible the transaction would be given the need for large amounts of financing, and Walgreens Boots and KKR could decide against pursuing a deal, the People said. Walgreens Boots shares rose 6% to $62.84 at 1:34 p.m. in New York trading. Its bonds in Europe fell. Walgreens Boots, led by Chief Executive Officer Stefano Pessina, has been reviewing a potential deal with a financial advisor to take the company private amid buyout interest, Bloomberg News reported last week. Some buyout firms looked but decided against pursuing such a big deal, people with knowledge of the matter said at the time. There's no certainty the deliberations will lead to a definitive takeover offer, the People said. Representatives for Walgreens Boots and KKR declined to comment. Record buyout. Deerfield, Illinois-based Walgreens Boots has a market value of $56 billion and $16.8 billion in debt. At that size, a take private of the company would top the largest leveraged buyout in history. The 2007 sale of utility TXU Corp to KKR and TPG, which was worth about $45 billion, including debt, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. This wouldn't be Pessina's first ambitious private equity deal with KKR. Pessina partnered with the buyout firm to acquire Alliance Boots in 2007. That deal came at the height of the buyout boom and underscored the challenges of financing jumbo take-privates as banks struggled at the time to find buyers for the loans to pay for that deal. This potential would require Walgreens Boots to sell some $55 billion of debt, according to Credit Sites Inc. estimates. If raised in the junk markets, that would amount to the biggest such sale ever. The money would have to come from markets where banks have struggled in recent months to find buyers for riskier leveraged buyout loans, as investors weigh the risks of lending at the peak of a record-long credit boom. It's a tough time to do such a large deal, according to Stephen Schwartzman, head of the Blackstone Group Incorporated, one of the world's largest private equity firms. It might be possible, Schwartzman said last week at a Reuters newsmaker event in New York. It's a huge stretch doing things over $50 billion. Under pressure. Pacina, 78, took his current role after Walgreens Company acquired the part of Alliance Boots that it didn't really own for about $15.3 billion in 2014. The company's businesses range from established retail chains in the U.S. and Europe to the lesser-known pharmacy supplier Alliance. He owns a 16% stake in Walgreens Boots, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. A buyout would give Walgreens Boots time to adapt to a fast-changing retail landscape free from the quarter-by-quarter demands of public shareholders. The company is under immense pressure from online competitors, including Amazon.com Incorporated, that have chipped away at sales of household and beauty items, while top rival CVS Health Corp has grown into a vertically integrated healthcare giant. Walgreens Boots has doubled down on shops, announcing pilot partnerships with retailers, including grocer Kroger Company. Walgreens Boots is the largest retail pharmacy in the U.S. and Europe, with more than 18,750 stores in 11 countries, according to its most recent annual report. Its wholesale arm has more than 400 distribution centers and delivers to more than 240,000 pharmacies, doctors, health centers, and hospitals. It operates Walgreens and Duane Reade stores in the U.S. and Boots outlets in Europe and Asia. 3/4 of its revenue stems from the U.S. pharmacy business. The company had sought to buy rival Rite Aid Corporation. In 2017, the company scrapped the merger amid regulators' concerns that it would hurt competition in the U.S. drugstore market. Walgreens Boots instead bought roughly 2,000 stores from Rite Aid. Right. Moving on. By the way, caller lines wide open. You want to call in, be a part of the big show, please feel free. Also, I'd like to say, ladies and gentlemen, the Rant with Charles Lamson is completely audience supported. To donate, please send cash, check, or money order to 1203 Fox Chase Drive at Charles Lamson, 1203 Fox Chase Drive, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301. That's right. So send that cash check or money order payable to Charles Lamson, 1203 Fox Chase Drive, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301. Caller lines are wide open. You want to call in, be a part of the big show, please feel free. That number, we still got about 25 minutes left in the big show. That number is 657-383-1825, 657-383-1825. Give us a call, be a part of the big shoe. All right. Bitcoin price faces drop to 8.5K after consecutive weekly losses. Well, that's a damn shame. Coming at you from CoinDesk. The fine folks at CoinDesk. Omkar Gadboli, to be more precise. Good. Bitcoin's consecutive weekly losses and multiple failures at key resistance have shifted risk in favor of a drop to around $8,550 and perhaps as low as $8,000. Daily chart indicators have turned bearish for the first time in over a month, supporting the case for a deeper decline. A high volume move above $9,335 descending trend line from 2019 high is needed to revive the bullish view. Bitcoin is looking south after back-to-back weekly losses and multiple rejections at key price resistance. The top cryptocurrency by market value fell 2.6% and 3% in the weeks ended November 3rd and 10th, respectively. November 3 and 10, 3rd and 10th, respectively. Importantly, BTC has also failed for 3 straight weeks to close. Sunday UTC, above the 3.5-month trend line, sloping downwards from the 2019 high of $13,880. Acceptance above that hurdle would have meant a revival of the bull market set in motion by a solid break above 5,000 in early April. The inability to pass that level, currently around $9,335, has weakened the bullish case put forward by the high volume rise from $7,300 to $10,300 on October 25th and 26th. Markets usually test dip demand after multiple rejections at key resistance, and Bitcoin is already feeling the pull of gravity. At press time, the cryptocurrency is trading at $8,680 on the Bitstamp, representing a 1% drop on a 24-hour basis. Losses could be extended further with the 200-day moving average support now breached. The barometer of long-term market trend is currently located at $9,236. Other technical indicators have also turned bearish over the weekend. BTC is losing altitude, having faced rejection at the descending trend line for 3 straight weeks. The 14-week relative strength index, the RSI, remains in bearish territory below resistance at 53. It's worth noting that the 53 to 55 range acted as a strong support throughout the 2016-2017 bull run. Hence, a move above 55, if and when it occurs, could be taken as a confirmation of bull market. Bitcoin's failure to hold above the descending bearish 5-candle MA, as represented by the November candle's upper wick, is translating into a price drop, as expected. The MACD histogram on the daily chart has crossed below zero over the weekend and is currently signaling at its most bearish since October 3rd with a negative 59 reading. The RSI is currently bearish below 50. BTC has also found acceptance below the 200-day MA, a level that acted as strong support in the 9 days to November 7th. All in all, BTC appears on track to test and possibly breach the 50-day MA at $8,552. A violation there would expose the psychological support of $8,000. On the higher side, a convincing move above the 3.5-month descending trend line hurdle, currently at $9,335, is needed to confirm a bullish breakout. Disclosure: I hold no cryptocurrency assets at the time of this report, and neither does the writer, who I am blatantly stealing from. So there you go. Okay, I'm not stealing. I'm borrowing heavily. Paraphrasing. It's an homage, whatever. Okay, whatever you want to call it. All right. I cited my sources at the beginning of the article. Damn it! So people at CoinDesk. It's coming at you from CoinDesk. All right. So there. I am an honest man. Damn it. What the fuck is it? Pardon my language. Right. Hello. I would like. Okay. Anyway, Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon, when questioned about $31 million pay, should have said he's worth it. Oh, okay. Says Kramer. Coming at you from the fine folks at CNBC.com. Kramer, Jamie Dimon, when questioned about $31 million pay, should have said he's worth it. Kevin Stankiewicz. Sure, got. Oh, Kramer. Well, let's see what Kramer has to say. Damn loudmouth Kramer. Let's see what he's got to say here. See how user-friendly this video is. Mm-hmm. Go you over there. Yeah, 219. Okay.
This is Loma Linda, a place with one of the highest life expectancies in the country.
You see so many people walking around here, and they're hundreds.
So how do you stay financially well for all those extra years?
You have to start planning as early as
Oh,
possible.
yeah.
We all need to plan for 18 years or more of retirement.
I don't have a whole lot saved up, but I'm working on it now.
Plan now for retirement income that lasts. That's financial wellness. Talk to a
All right,
financial
come on,
advisor
all
at
righty,
Income
let's
Solutions
go.
at Prudential.
Let's go.
Look, this is something Dennis Muhlenberg said in front of Congress, and boy, did he ever pull back on that, because he did say, "Listen, we're in a crisis," and that was wrong. This is what they always say: board comp. David, you know board comp. There's a guy on the comp committee. What does he do? He says, for XYZ Bank, well, that guy's making X, so we got to give that guy. We got to give our guy X, and so then it becomes just a self-fulfilling prophecy. I wish that they had interviewed Brian Moynihan, because they've got so many people at Bank of America who paid six figures, which is a good living. But yeah, that compensation's a little crazy.
Yes.
What are you gonna
and
do?
You do have people on the comp committee who are, or not necessarily on every board, but certainly there's cross-pollination in terms of CEOs who are on boards, who are on the comp committee. So it's in their interest to make sure. Listen, I think also it's important that the metrics that are used for executive comp are the right ones. I think that has been a focus of some activist investors. Are we focused as shareholder? How should you judge how well management has done?
Well,
Would
I
it
mean,
be simply on EPS? No, most likely not. Return on invested capital. I mean, all sorts of different metrics that are now incorporated, at least many of them, in determining sort of where the exec comp should go.
Why
But
didn't
the numbers are extraordinarily high.
Why didn't Jamie say, well, one of the things that I've done is I've tripled the value of the stock, and so shareholders have benefited? Why did he do that? I mean, Leslie Stoll was saying, listen, you to fob that off. Here's what Jamie, like I'm telling Jamie what to do. Like, who the heck am I? But one of the things that would have been smart, I think, he would have said, look, shareholders have been rewarded, and therefore the board has rewarded me. I have created a lot of wealth for people in the stock, or my team has. You did the team stuff. But he didn't do that.
You're asking him to say, I'm worth it, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly right. Which I would have said that if I were him. I would have said, look, I know you think that I may be overpaid, but I do point out that others have shared in the wealth. I bought back stock at the right level. I certainly I got the earnings to be good. And he didn't make a good case for himself. And he didn't.
All right, you say so, Kramer. Whatever you say, bro. Like the haircut, though.
Smith is a buy right now. Uber, not so much. I say swap out of always and swap into.
Well, I don't care. Thank you.
I like this.
Thank you,
I
Kramer.
like it a lot. First Horizon.
Thank you for that. All right. Okay, moving on, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on. Okay. Canadian dollar. British pound outlook bearish as week starts. Coming at you from Daily FX. It's a little dated. It's 20 hours ago. So, in the world of finance, that can be a little dated, but let's see here. Canadian dollar and British pound weakened. Daniel Dubrovsky is the writer of this article. All right. Asia Pacific market open talking points. Canadian dollar fell on jobs data. USD CAD uptrend may extend. The British pound dropped on negative Moody UK credit outlook. Asia Pacific markets face opposing Friday US-China trade news. Find out what the number one mistake that traders make is and how you can fix it. Oh, wait, that's a fucking... Pardon my language. Oh, my gosh, I can't believe... Dropped an F-bomb. Canadian dollar and British pound weakened. The Canadian dollar underperformed against the U.S. dollar on Friday as a softer than expected local jobs report fueled a BLC rate cut bets. Bach rate cut bets. In October, Canada lost 1.8K employed positions, 1.8 thousand positions, when economists were anticipating a 15,000 increase. Most of these were lost from a full-time sector, negative 16.1K, while the typically less favorable part-time segment gained 14.3K positions. Meanwhile, the anti-risk Japanese yen and heaven-linked U.S. dollar outperformed as the markets received opposing trade war headlines. Initially, stocks sank after U.S. President Donald Trump said there was no official agreement to roll back Chinese tariffs in the event of a Phase 1 deal signing. This contrasted with prior news to the contrary. Then the U.S. president stated that a deal would be signed in the U.S. if reached by the end of the session. The S&P 500 closed 0.26% to the upside as markets remained hopeful of a trade accord. The British pound extended declines from Thursday after Moody's changed the UK's credit rating outlook and revised it to negative from stable. This was largely as a result of ongoing Brexit paralysis. Monday's Asia-Pacific trading session. With that in mind, as liquidity returns at the onset of the new trading week, sterling may extend its decline as it attempts to clear key support. A relatively quiet economic docket during Monday's Asia-Pacific trading session places the focus for currencies on risk trends. It remains to be seen which way regional bourses will favor, given Friday's opposing developments in U.S.-China trade news. Canadian dollar technical analysis. USD CAD has extended its near-term uptrend. USD to CAD has extended its near-term uptrend after finding a bottom during the end of October, as anticipated. Prices are sitting on the outer edge of immediate resistance at 1.3226. A daily close above this level may open the door to revisiting the former rising support line from July. It may establish itself as new resistance. Otherwise, a close under 1.3206 risks reversing recent upside progress. Moving on. All right. Popeyes. Popeyes employee made chicken sandwiches on trash bin. Owner apologizes. What the hell is that about? These damn wacky kids nowadays. Somebody needs to take that kid behind the woodshed. Back when I was his age, we used to do. Okay, anyway. I'm going to have to shut up here before I get thrown in jail. Oh, I see what he's doing. Okay, it looks like an honest enough mistake. He had like a pan. Okay. It was used. All right, but still, it's very unsanitary. It looks like the kid was more. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, I guess. It's not like he was being malicious, but let's see here. Look, I'm looking at a picture. He kind of had a tray over the trash can and was like, all right, but okay. I didn't know what they meant by he was preparing it on the trash can, but what he's actually doing is not as bad as it sounds. It's still pretty bad. It's not very sanitary, but here we go. Oh, looks like we've got a call here. See what's going on. Oh, well, we did. Anyway, don't be shy. Caller, you want to call back in? Please feel free. Because still got about 5 minutes left in the big show. But I was just about to pick up your call. But anyway. All right, moving on. A Popeyes employee was caught making their now infamous chicken sandwiches above a trash can, for which the owner has now taken full responsibility and corrected. TMZ has obtained some pretty shocking photos taken Friday at a Popeyes restaurant in Fairfax, Virginia. That's right. You're getting financial news from TMZ. Okay, now let's see here. Where it appears an employee. Okay, I think I'm okay. I just have a real problem with TMZ. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm not going to read their articles on my damn financial show. I don't want to be associated. I'm sorry, TMZ. I'm trying to run a credible show over here. I'm trying to maintain my credibility, all right? As an expert in the world of economics and finance. And I'm not going to get there by reading articles from TMZ. Is the Chinese Tesla model better than the U.S. version, the U.S.-made version? So, yeah, if you guys want to read it, go ahead. I just, F TMZ. I don't really care. I mean, they're what's wrong with this country, man. I know I sound like a crazy old man. Whatever. It's true. It's true, man. So whatever, you know, let's see. Come on. Okay, so this article right here. Is the Chinese Tesla Model 3, better than the US made version? Well, let's see. By Gustavo Enrique Rufo. Chinese journalist Yan Cheng says the Tesla Model 3 made in China is a miracle, not only because the factory was not even there on January 7th. The factory was not even there on January 7th when Elon Musk laid its cornerstone. His central allegation is that the Chinese Model 3 is better than the American one. Oh shit. And Chang has strong arguments to support that. Got another big tech company teaming up with China. The first one is that he is a Tesla Model 3 owner himself for some time already, which gives him a reliable comparison basis. Secondly, Tesla provided him with information that supports the Chinese version is better in terms of water and sound insulation. It would also not have the same manufacturing defect the American version has, but what would Chang be referring to? He does not provide any information about that in the video that they put out. I don't have time to play the video for you, but it's basically like a promo video. Still, he shows images of a trunk hinge that allows us to compare the Chinese unit to the one produced in Fremont and sold to Joni Savile. Once again, this it's hard to tell what's propaganda and what's not coming out of China. So I'm just not, I'm not going to waste my time on this article, period. End of fucking story. End of story. I'm not going to sit here and read Chinese propaganda on my damn show. It's going too far, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not even getting a paycheck from them, so why would I? I'm not getting paid to spew out their propaganda. Okay, hey, ladies and gentlemen, end of the big show. Once again, I would just like to thank you all for tuning in and remind you that the Rant with Charles Lamson is completely audience supported. To donate, please send cash, check, or money order to 1203 Charles Lamson at 1203 Fox Chase Drive, St. Charles, Missouri, 63301. Once again, make the cash check, money order, make it payable to Charles Lamson, 1203 Fox Chase Drive, St. Charles, Mo, 63301. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Until next show.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
I just want to say, don't take any wooden nickels.